Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, wherever you may be. So my name is Matthew Shaw, and it's my pleasure to speak with all of you today and present the little project that I've been working on, which has blossomed itself, I suppose. It's the auditing universe and a whole bunch of web intelligence documents that I've built on top of it. So I've got some presentation to go through with you, and then I'd like to go into a demonstration and explain to you the documents and the reports, the insight that you might be able to obtain from your own web intelligence, your own auditing database, and then I'll be able to show you what the plans are. So this is a rough agenda. So an overview of the web intelligence documents and demonstration fairly early on, an overview of the new universe. We'll look at the installation. How do you install this solution? What platform support is required and necessary, and what the future plans are. So you can feel free to post any questions you've got in the chat, and also, of course, we'll take questions at the end as well. So as means of introductory then, why have I done this? Well, the customer demand for audit reports has always been there for web intelligence. Customers want web intelligence reports. The ones that are currently there are for crystal reports. And also the universe that was currently provided, shall we say, didn't really follow all the best practices. It's a nice way of putting it, because it was really quite an awkward universe to use. It wasn't built with best practices in mind. It meant that I couldn't put this object with sort of any other object. It meant confusing results, and it was just not very pleasant to use. So I thought, I'm going to start again, not use the existing reports or the existing universe as any good place to start. I started from the ground up. So I built a whole new brand new universe, and originally, actually, many years ago, sort of about 5-6 years ago, and I developed it originally with XI3, and I added to it over the years, and of course it can be BI4, and then I upgraded to a UNX universe, and now it's matured reasonably well. It's got a little bit more maturity to go, but it's pretty good for general sort of wider circulation. So I focused on business questions, business problems, things that I hear customers ask all the time. So the bunch of reports I provided 16 documents, but actually there's actually many more reports within each of those documents. So, report tabs inside the document. So, but generally speaking, I've focused on things like user activity, system activity and performance, so finding out which servers are the busiest or which application server is the busiest, that kind of thing, where the load is on the system, stuff that isn't used anymore, whether that be users or documents or objects, universes, everything and anything. Also analysis of sessions and users and that sort of stuff from a license perspective. If you're thinking of changing your license from or to concurrent users to named users, that kind of thing, then that would be of interest to you. Some other interesting bits I've managed to work on are things like fraud detection. So, for example, if you've got one machine that's been used by more than one user, now some organisations have the sort of restriction so that one user can only use one machine, and that kind of thing, which we can pick up on. Also, an analysis of the kind of what I've called modes, which is scheduled or interactive. You want to see, I think, all this kind of activity or some of it by the different mode. It's either scheduled or it's interactive, or you want to compare the two. And then also, all of these documents are all cluster and tenant aware. So if you've got multiple clusters or multiple tenants, then that's fine. The documents in the universe are built for it. So as a quick introductory to the web intelligence document. So best practice throughout. I'm a best practice champion, and indeed every document has an about page which describes the purpose of it. I'll show you that in a bit. And every data provider, block, conditional format, document has a proper name and description with keywords and everything, and it's documented everywhere, so it's wonderful. There's generally a consistent look and feel throughout all the documents and the reports, and I'll show you that in a moment when I explain some of the reports, and then you'll go, right, and then when you see another one, you'll see, I get how this is laid out now, and then I'll understand how to interpret the results. Extensive use of input controls throughout, and where possible, I've optimized for, big data, big massive volumes of stuff. I've used complex queries, all kinds of stuff. I've pushed as much work as I can down to the database, and there's also quite a number of complex subqueries. And where I've used complex subqueries, I've always done filters on dates and things like that. But there is a little area where a little bit more work needs to be done. I'll explain that to you in a bit. All blocks, so table charts and cells and everything like that, they're all relative positions and things like that. So it's easy for you to manage and change the layout and the reports and adapt as you need to. Now, the documents that I've provided, some of them, in fact, probably many of them, are jolly complicated. That is, the SQL that it generates can be quite complex, and databases that, the audit database in particular, that is receiving lots of different requests to insert data, doesn't really like the analytical kind of queries that get thrown at it. So I've broken up some of these documents into other ones which make the query a lot simpler, and thus if you run the simple query and it takes perhaps, 10 minutes to run, then it might mean that the more complex one will take, a jolly lot longer. And so some of these documents, for example, I don't know, we've got here sys3, for example. He says times1, and he's got another one times 2, and times 2, and times 4. What does this times mean? So times 1 just means it takes whatever, how long it is. And then the times 4 equivalent would be, well, it's about 4 times as complex. So if it takes 10 minutes on the times 1, for the times 4, it'd be maybe 40 minutes. And then there's ones down here which are kind of times 30. So you can imagine some of these queries are really quite complicated. And a lot of it's because of complex filters which require sub-selects and sub-queries to gain the analytical aspect out of the database. The database has been designed for sort of inserts, not really querying. And also, there's this measure object called users, the number of users using the system. And I'll talk more about that in a bit, but that is a database delegated measure object. So for each combination of dimensions, you're going to get a query to the database. So you can end up with lots of queries, which is what's going on down here with the times 30. So I'm a real sort of best practice universe champion. I think I should run a best practice universe course or webinar. In fact, I think using this platform here, probably next year, perhaps January time, that sort of thing. 3 or 4 of them in a row, one after the other, I suspect. And so I'm applying my own best practice. So every object works with every other object. Hey, it's not bad, is it? Well, almost. Some objects like users and sessions, it doesn't necessarily make sense with other objects like status. But generally speaking, you can use any object with any other object. And of course, everything is documented. So, I don't need to list it. You can read it. Everything's there. And it's optimized for performance. So, index awareness, anti-92 SQL, context for multiple SQL, parallel query on the database, shortcut joins, you name it, it's done it. And also, I've tested this as best I can for mass volumes of data. So it might work, for example, on a few million rows of data, but when some of these objects run on hundreds of millions of rows, you can get some runtime errors. So I've identified those. I believe hopefully all of them, and I've had to change things like integers into big int because an integer just isn't big enough for the kind of numbers that we're adding up here. All kinds of things, other things like list of values are optimized to prevent outer joins, all kinds of things. And also, unlike the existing universe, you don't get prompted for which language. No, we don't do it that way. What we do is we have a predefined filter in the universe. So we pick up the preferred viewing locale of the client, whatever that is, Webby Rich client or the web browser, and we use that as the filter to pick out the language that you want to see as the lookup. So again, that's just a nice little touch. Oh, demonstration time. Let's jump to that. So I need to find the right screen is the next challenge. Okay, here we go. So the first document I'm going to take you through is the system log, because actually the audit database that's all that it is really. It's just an event log. So here's the about page. I'll describe this once and that'll be it. So it's got a purpose, and then it's got your query specification and other bits of stuff as to what's been filtered. And then in this case, we've only got one report tab, haven't we? Event log, but in many of the documents, there's absolutely loads of them. So let's talk about this event log. So this is jolly handy. It's in the audit database. There's just really two tables. There's a bunch of lookups, but there's really just two tables. There's the event table, and that is represented in this case, or the first one row in that event table is this sort of block, or these two blocks at the top. So you've got things like cluster server, start date, that sort of stuff, and information about the object type, all those kind of bits of information, the status and all that sort of stuff. And then for each row in the event table, we have many rows in the event details, and that's what you're seeing here. So this thing here is all the events, all the event details associated with that individual event. So it's a great way of just seeing what's in the audit database. It's just a list. That's all that it is. And if you ever got the question, does this get audited? The simplest thing to do is just do it and then look at this event log, and you'll see what gets captured. So that's that now then. So some little tips and tricks for using this document is we've got, for example, here a session ID. If I press my Control-C, copy that, I can paste him into the input control, and if I can then filter just on that session ID, and that means I can now see all of the events that occurred within that session, which is quite nice. And then there's also this concept of an action ID and actions and events. So when you open up a web intelligence document, for example, that is one action. But actually what happens under the scenes is many events get triggered. Like the web intelligence document is retrieved and then it displays the page. I think those are the two events. So if you have got an event and you want to know what were the associated events with it, you simply copy the action ID, you paste it into the input filter, and your job done. And there you go. I've now got the two events that, or in fact in this case quite a few events that occurred within that action ID. So that's quite a handy little thing to do. It's great for working out what a user did or something like that. And then we've got other filters in here. Obviously dates and times, users, clusters, errors. Yeah, that could be quite good. You want to identify an error. And you've got things like application type, object type, event type, and status, that kind of stuff. Right? You got the idea. So he's a really good chap to play around with in the event log. Let's close him down and we'll go on to another one. Just close that down. Okay, so this guy here is the delay in recording of events to the audit database. So we store in the audit database the event start date and time, and also the date and time the event itself finds its way into the audit database. So the difference between the two is the delay. And that's exactly what you can visualize here. So what this means is you be able to identify basically is your audit data, is it all complete? And also, if there's any sort of delays in the data getting to the database, and you might be able to thus make some alterations or tuning where necessary. So let me just explain the structure of this. I'll do it once, and then you'll get the idea for all the other reports. So we've got, in this case, we've got the measure, which is, I don't know, delay in recording time, and then the maximum delay in recording time and the average day. So data, and then you've got a bunch of a table down here of the stuff, and then this is just the delay over time. So YMDH is year, month, day, and hour. And then on the next report, I've removed the year and the month. So this is just across the days and the hours, ignoring the years and months, because there might be a trend within each year and month, right? And then equally, on the next report tab, instead of it by day and hour, it's just by hour, because there might be trends within the hour. Got the idea? And then we go again, weekday by hour, and then of course then delay by server, then by event category, and that kind of thing. Got the idea? Let's go for the next one. So this document here, this is all about refresh analysis. So just refreshing stuff, content, and identifying potentially the worst offenders, and taking necessary action. In fact, on the SCM blog, people have posted, it's actually been really helpful because they've identified, problematic documents that were really big or badly designed, and then it's been improved and everyone benefits. So here we've got expensive rows. So this is for my database. There's only me on it, so I haven't got a huge amount of data in that sense. But you might be able to identify with this sort of plotter chart here some outliers in terms of badly performing documents in terms of their size. A bit of a heat mappy kind of thing going on here, grouped by the folder, the top level folder, so Webby samples, auditing, that kind of thing. And if you hover over, and you can see the actual document that is the offender in this case. And that's of course for rows, and then we do it by size, and then we do it by duration, and you got the idea. And then we start another load of charts here. This is events, so the number of events. You've got rows. You've got the total duration in hours. So, and whether it's events or rows or duration, these are for all the events that occur. So if you've got one document and it's got like, I don't know, 1 million rows in it, and if it gets refreshed 10 times, then that's 10 million rows, right? And if it takes 10 minutes and there's 10 of them, it'll take 100 minutes kind of thing. So that's what you're seeing here. So it's the total of all hours of processing, all that kind of stuff. And you'll be amazed as to even a small system, how many hours of processing gets done on your platform, and how many rows it gets processed. I mean, look at, I'm on 80 million rows here, and there's only me. So you've got that, and then also we've got like rows per hour to throw throughput. So throughput might be of interest because you might be able to identify actually a bit of a bottleneck. There's too many people on the system and the throughput goes down. Maybe that's something that you could then look into. And then also a document size. And then you've got the idea. So you've got over year and month. Then we go by over day, because you then might have the same metrics, but just looking at the trend through the day. Then the hour, the weekday. Got the idea. And then we then look at things like the application type. And for all of these things, you've got also input controls of all the things that I've explained earlier. Don't need to go through them again. And it just keeps kind of going. So you've got application type over all the different time dimensions, by server, also by mode. So this is whether it's interactive or scheduled. So you can see here, for example, my scheduled refreshes is there's many more of them than there are interactive ones, for example, right? And then there's loads of other charts, as you would expect down here. And what else? And then you can go by object type, top level folder. So for many organizations, that could be quite important, because you want to see, well, you've got many projects on your platform, which one is actually the most expensive or using the system the most. So you'll be able to see and analyze that and compare them appropriately. And of course, with the analysis by all these different time dimensions, you can identify which one is the most busiest on a Friday or at the end of the week or the end of the month, that kind of thing. Also by clusters and also by tenants for those that have tenants. So as you can start to see, hopefully, it's quite a comprehensive set of Web Intelligence documents. And we've only just started. So this guy here is very similar to the refresh analysis, but he's just a system load analysis. So it's the same kind of thing, though. It's the same metrics, just without limiting it on the refresh event. It's on everything. So you'll find that there's actually more input controls here because there's more things that you can filter on. But for any of these, you can obviously filter it and to your heart's content. And you kind of get the idea. I don't need to go into the idea, but you've got all of this by applications, server, mode, all the stuff that we mentioned before. You can imagine the number of hours I've spent developing this. It is months of work. So what we got here, this is session analysis. Oh yeah, now I've spent hours and hours talking about this to many people. So session analysis, let's have a look at the actual chart, shall we? So this is just simply the number of sessions over time, right? But there's three metrics, and I shall explain those. And so we've got the sessions, you've got rows, and you've got rows per hour, and events and actions and all that sort of stuff, document size and all that sort of analysis. And then you've got the same stuff, same reports, same charts, everything like that, but again, broken out by the different dimensions and time. Now, so you might, for example, identify, I don't know, within across the month, there's a general trend of session peakage towards the end of the month, at the beginning of the month, that kind of thing. Let's talk a bit, just a moment, about what these measures really mean. So a concurrent user, this measure is, shall we say, the true accurate figure for the number of concurrent users that are on the system, but only for the users that are of type concurrent, because a user is either concurrent or named. They're one or the other. Whenever a user logs on to the system or logs off, in that audit event detail, we store the number of concurrent users that are on the system at any point in time. So that's what concurrent user is. So he's an accurate number. Unlike, though, sessions peak, brackets, named and concurrent users. So this measure is looking at the number of session IDs that are within that period, which is an hour. Right? So it's just looking at the session ID and simply the unique number of them. And the number of sessions doesn't relate to the concurrency, because it might be that I log on and then I log off, I log on and log off, and I do that 10 times. I've got 10 session IDs, right? So it'll say 10. And it won't be able to distinguish between whether that's concurrent or not. So the number could be, in some cases, too high or too low, because you might also have a session on the platform, but if you're not doing any events that get recorded in the audit database, then there's nothing there to pick up, and thus it won't be able to identify that session actually exists. Does that make sense? So do read these definitions, because you need to interpret the results properly and carefully. Users, this is an important one, because when I just described there that I logged on and I logged off, and I logged on and perhaps I did that 10 times, that's perhaps, it gives me something, this figure, sessions peak, but actually users could actually be potentially more helpful, because that's the number of users, real user IDs. So in that case, it would show just one for me. And this measure, when it works across over time, if you didn't do it on the hour, you looked at it by the month, purely at the month level, then it would be the number of users within the month. So it wouldn't count me twice just because I logged in at 9 o'clock and at 10 o'clock or on multiple days. It would only count me once. Does that make sense? And then we've also got actions and events. So that's what these measures are. So yeah, I guess that's it. But you might have some questions about that in the chat. So let's have a look at this one here. This is telling me simply when I refresh it, the number of events that exceeded, and then you get prompted for the number that you want to enter. So you refresh this chap, and view periods where the number of sessions exceeded X, and you type in your figure, I don't know, 50 or 100 or something like that, because you might be interested in converting to concurrent users or something like that, and then you'll be able to identify the periods that have occurred in the past as to when the number of sessions has exceeded that number. So that's jolly helpful if you've got some sort of license conversion thing going on. And then let's have a look at some other documents. We've got, for example, the fraud detection ones. They're quite good fun to look at. We'll just have a look at one of these. Won't go through everything. So this is to identify any machines where that machine was used to log on with more than one user within any one day. So here's an example. So this user here, well, there's two users, there's guest and administrator, and they use the same machine to log on. Okay, and then there's other ones there which are, one machine with multiple logon failures. That could be of interest. What else have we got here? We've got a large number of data providers. So just tell me all the documents that have got a large number of data providers. And I need to explain to you, there's a bit of a current defect in the auditing recording, which means that this document doesn't really work for Web Intelligence reports. It works for Crystal, but not for Webby. I'll explain more about that in a bit. And what else have we got? You've got documents no longer used in the system. Universe objects usage, identify infrequently used objects. Again, that's a bit of a defect there for Web Intelligence reports. I'll explain more about that in a moment. And also universes that are no longer used. So it's a good bunch of Web Intelligence documents to give you, huge insight, I hope, into what's going on into your audit database. And let's just go into a little bit of the detail, because with all of those documents, yes, you can use all those lovely input controls that I've spent hours building for you, but you actually probably want to add other filters into the report because they will run for a long time. So I've built for you a load of predefined filters. Here's one, for example, sessions with application type BI Launchpad, and another one, sessions with application type BI, the mobile application. And this is what its definition is. So we've got, and the reason I suppose I put this here is because you may well need to build something a bit similar. And I needed to explain to you that generally speaking, an event, a Web Intelligence document, for example, would get processed on a server, and that server will record an event, like it's refreshed a document, or it's retrieved the report down from the repository and it's opened it up. What it doesn't know is all the context around it, and that is, it does know the context around it, but when it comes to the audit event, there's nothing there. It's just, I've opened the document, I've downloaded it, I've refreshed it. To understand the application that was using it, or the environment, like it was in the scheduled mode, or that you're using this on a BI mobile, you have to look at all the other events within the same session, right? So that's why you need to have this filter, which is the session ID in list, the session ID, and then you have to make sure you filter on the dates, otherwise it's going to be too big a query. And then you put in your additional filter. So in this case, it's application type. Here's one for scheduled mode. So in this case, we're looking at whether if there's a job server involved or not. If there was a job server, then it's a scheduled, and if it isn't, then it's an interactive. Okay. We've got named users, and then we're picking out particular types. We're identifying whether the user is a named user or not. And the other thing you need to be careful about is for some of the events, we record lots and lots of details. And like for example, refreshing a web intelligence document that has two different universes, right? We record in the details the multiple universe IDs and the universe names. But that's a problem in a way, because you end up then with multiple rows for an individual event. And then you can kind of get Cartesian products, and it kind of gets a bit of a mess in terms of the results. So you then need to be quite careful, and you then have to make sure that you use you base the filter on the event ID, and in some cases with other attributes, in this case the universe data provider ID. So you're joining on these two, you're restricting it just to the event IDs for where a particular condition is found to be true. In this case, where the universe objects is greater than a particular number, right? So, but I've pre-built, obviously most of these, a lot of these things already for you, and I've also made it nice and easy. Let me just jump to here. Let me pick. We'll just pick a document. Have I got one open? Oh yeah, this will do. If I edit this guy, so here's the universe, obviously, with the objects, and if you notice here, this folder here, for example, is specific event types, brackets, multiple values per event. So when you're using objects in here, these guys are going to return multiple rows, or could return multiple rows for where you only got one, and then you can get some funny results. So to prevent you from doing that, just use the drop-down box at the top and go to Simple View. And now I provide a money-back guarantee that you can now pick and throw any object in here and you'll get the right results. And when you now scroll down to the specific events, even where you've got specific event types, multiple values for each event, you can still see the filters. So you can still filter on events that record multiple rows per event, and you get the right results. Does that make sense? It's a bit complicated, but basically use a simple view, and you can't go wrong, because it gets a bit complicated. If you do want to do some of these other things yourself, by all means, have a look at the universe and just pre-build, and build the filter in a very similar way that I have done. So let's jump back to here. So, we've got a bunch of advanced objects. So things like mode, there's another one called mode. These guys are used when I'm comparing a bunch of events which are of a particular mode with another bunch of events of a particular mode, so scheduled and interactive. And what I have to do is I have to have two queries that I union together. These objects here help me identify which group that is, and then I have to use an appropriate filter with it. So and then there's also the complex subqueries. So when you're building some complex subqueries, you often need to use loads of objects all at once. So I've just made that easier just by one object which represents a whole bunch of things all at the same time. And there's also a bunch of dummy objects, which is a bit unique to this environment. So this is welcome to my development environment. Here I've got all the different universes, and this universe here, for example, is for SQL Server, right? This guy here is for SQL Anywhere. This one's here for Oracle. Now, I'm providing to you one set of web intelligence documents, and lots of different universes for all the different flavors that are available. Now, when I add a new object into one of these universes, and I drag and drop the object into another one for a different database, the ID for that object changes. It's actually quite unique to UNX universes. UNV universes, it would remember the ID. UNX universes, it doesn't. We've done that deliberately. But for me, it's a bit of a pain, because when you then come to bind or reuse the same documents with a different universe, you have some binding problems. So I've got around that problem because I pre-created a load of objects, and then which have, of course, and then I've copied that across all the universes. So all these objects I know have the same ID, and then that'll be okay for me. So that's why it's there. don't really have to worry about it. And eventually I'll run out of IDs, run out of objects, and then I have to mess around with the business layer XML file. It's a bit nasty, but there's a way to do it. So, okay, and then, oh yeah, for the advanced objects, I'm also going to add some other ones on there, for example, application type, because with all those analysis that I provided to you, great insight and everything, but you might also want to say, well, yeah, actually, well, can I compare now BI Launchpad with perhaps the users from the CMC or the mobile or Lumira or Design Studio, that kind of thing, and that's what you're going to be able to do later on. That's what I plan anyway. So, of course, this stuff is available today. It's been available for a few months. Go to the blog, and you can download the latest zip file. In fact, I put one up there this morning. So this is the blog. You can just scroll all the way down, and there's a little download button. You click on that, and it takes you to this mobile documents. Look for the highest build number, 8.4. Download the zip. And in the zip is one beer file for the Web Intelligence documents, and a number of beer files for each of the universes. And you just import one of those for the universe and one for Webby documents. You change the connection to point to the audit database, and off you go. And that's that. And because of all the IDs I've kept to be the same across all the universes, including the QID for the universe as well as the objects within the universe, they're all identical. I can guarantee that you don't get any binding issues. So that's great. So it means for development, if I build or you build a document and you share it with somebody else, it's going to work regardless of their backend database. So where do you start? So yeah, okay, you've downloaded it, you set the connection, and would you just run everything? No, you don't. You've got to be really, really careful. First thing you do is you run the report STA1, start here, events over time, because this is a very, very simple query. Where have I got it? This is it here, events over time, and it's a very simple query. It's just simply the count of events and the number of details, because you want to see how many millions of rows of data you've got in your database. And the reason is because I've shared this with many people, and many have said, oh, well, it takes, I know, 3 hours to run a query across 4 hours worth of data. Or it takes, 6 hours to run this for a month's worth. All kinds of stories of durations taking forever. And also, if you're using Oracle, the Oracle temp space can fill up and that can bring down your database, so you've got to be really careful about that. So strong advice is that you Microsoft PowerPoint just stopped working on me. Let me just restart that. Okay, so the strong advice is to just run the report just for like 1 day, then be brave and do it for 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then eventually a week, okay? Because the reports, if you don't filter by time, will run forever, potentially. So remember, for the universe designer, remember to change it to simple view. You get my money back guarantee, you'll get the right results. And I mentioned earlier, yeah, some objects are not necessarily suitable to be used with all other objects. You're perhaps you need to play with it a bit to sort of start to realise that. And where possible, use the predefined filters. That's important. So for the platform support, so you need BI 4.1 support pack 5 or greater. That's because I've developed the reports in this version, okay? Older versions, SP3, I know have had some problems opening up the documents. I think SP4 will probably be all right, will be okay. And I've also ported this for SP HANA, SQL Server, Oracle, SQL Anywhere, and DB2. And if I get some time over Christmas, I will be doing hopefully an SAP HANA optimized version. So if you've got audit database in HANA, I will create some analytical views to improve the performance, because a lot of the cost of querying the audit database is converting clobs or blobs into integers and varchars and all that sort of stuff, and it's a bit of a databases don't really like it. So I'm going to if I do it in memory on the load of the data, it'll be a lot quicker. The audit database does need to be BI 4.1, but any version. And you can use, if you wanted to, BI 4.0 audit database. If you haven't upgraded already or updated your version to 4.1, you should do, because that's obviously running out of support pretty soon. But you just need to make some small modifications, which are listed there. And do remember that multiple clusters can write to the same audit database for any version of BI4. So if you've got a cluster down here for development, you've got a cluster for test, cluster for production, loads of other stuff, they can all point to the same audit database. Benefit of that is you've only got it one place. You can analyze across them, and the documents, of course, are cluster aware, so you can filter appropriately on your cluster. And that also works across different time zones as well. Not everyone knows about that. Right then, back-end known issues. So whilst my documents and universes are all fine and dandy, there are some issues with the data in the audit database. Nothing to do with me personally, but there are does have a bit of an impact. So I've highlighted here these issues, and if you go to the blog, I've recently put in this table so that we can consolidate that, and you can easily see the current issues, and you don't necessarily have to read all the comments because there's a lot of them. So let's quickly go through these. So the list of universe objects is not recorded when refreshing a Web Intelligence document based off a universe. It means that my document USA4 basically doesn't work. Okay, and it means you can't say, given this object, which documents has it been used with or in before, and by whom. So that we're going to try and fix in BI 4.2 SP2. We tried to fix it in earlier, but there was a chance of regression, so we put it slipped into SP2. Another one is refreshing a Web Intelligence document. Right. It's a bit technical, this bit. There's a bunch ID, and it doesn't change for when we store the universe ID and the universe name. So it means I can't identify which universe ID belongs to which universe name, and I need the bunch ID to do that. So I get a bit of a Cartesian product, and so you end up with some weird and funny results as a consequence. And the other one that's worth noting is that there does seem to be a runtime error with SQL Server. Some of the rows in the audit database cause this particular error, and it's nothing really wrong with the universe, it's something wrong in the data. So a customer has kindly shared with me their audit database. I'm going to have a look and analyse what's wrong with it and identify the root cause, and that will fix that problem, I hope. So next steps, well, if there's any bugs, I'm going to be fixing them. I'm not aware of that many, in fact, I'm not aware of any, but that's the kind of phase that we're in at the moment. And then also to extend the reports in the universe for additional reporting requirements. So I've got a good number of ideas, but I really need your help here. So error analysis is one. So looking at errors by user, mode, top level fault, all that kind of stuff. And I was also thinking one of, service level, the service level that the platform provides, is it 99% available, that kind of thing. Your thoughts on that would be interesting. Service, also publication and scheduling, performance stuff, which ones are performing well, which ones aren't. Another one, this one came from a customer, I think, at TechEd, was it? Publications that aren't consumed. So you create a publication, you run it, but actually, is anybody really consuming it? In which case, that would be useful to identify, and then you don't need the publication anymore. Obviously, wanting to make these this more available generally, and eventually we also want to put it into the main BI platform installer. But before that, I really want to develop it further, because as soon as it goes into the platform installer, my development needs to kind of slow down a bit, because I'm then in the product. And I also then have to translate it and all that kind of stuff that needs to follow too. And there are some other, BI on BI is a very popular theme, especially for next year for BI 4.2. And there are many other data sources of information. There's the monitoring database, which we could potentially merge some data from that and join that with these documents around performance and load, that kind of thing. And there's also a colleague, Thomas Jens, he's developed a solution for reporting off the CMS database. So this is a solution where basically it provides a bunch of tables which you then build a universe on and report against that to query the CMS database. So there's quite a few data sources there. With this, you could end up with quite a comprehensive set of analysis there, and also provide the mirror visualizations, design studio applications, that kind of thing. That's where I'm thinking of kind of going. So I do need your requirements. You need to help me here. So I need your business reporting requirements, your visualization requirements, feedback on performance too. So like for Oracle, for example, you shouldn't use the months between, I've learned. So those kind of functions I'm not using in my universe. So send me feedback. SDM blog, the comment, direct message, Twitter, email. Send me anything, flowers, chocolates, also very acceptable. And if you share your developments with me, I can help validate and share them with everyone else as well. Couple of general sort of recommendations, I suppose. Yeah. So generally speaking, I would generally recommend to put the setting to be complete for the number of events to capture, and capture everything and just throw it all in there. I do appreciate that for some large platforms that may not be appropriate because the volume of the data is just too big and there's a bit of a backup of the data. Well, you can use one of my documents to actually work out when that occurs and analyze that, potentially improve it too. But generally speaking, that's a broad sort of, it's a good idea because some of the stuff that is in my reports requires this, okay? But you'll be pleased to hear that in 4.2, we've improved the throughput for auditing events quite dramatically, I believe. So any current issues should be gone in 4.2. So there we go. That was a good introduction, I hope, for what the solution is. You saw a demonstration of the documents, a little bit overview of the universe as well, how to install it, the platform support, and where we're going. So thank you ever so much. There's been a huge amount of wonderful feedback, but I kind of need that to continue in terms of improving the quality of the universe, improving the quality of the documents, and improving the actual set of documents to meet more of your requirements. So that's really the end of my presentation. So I think it's probably time to go to questions and answers.